I don't know how many episodes I've done since I moved out here in September, but you're the only person that Jeremiah texted me immediately when you were in here and was like, you got to get this kid on your show.
I love it, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome, and I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this, man.
Oh, absolutely.
Brett Lawson in the building. Tell the people a little bit about your background. You were telling me right before we started recording all the places you've worked at.
Yeah, absolutely. So started just basically doing college radio and local play-by-play. That's how I basically started in sportscasting. It's really just a dream I've been pursuing for a long time. I guess anyone in the industry can say that, and they all have their own, their origin point. They're all their genesis, if you will. But that was mine, and then was able to come back here and through different internships, getting my start locally on the scene through the gambling sphere. Out here at a local gambling radio and television network, covering MMA, covering boxing, covering college football, just getting to kind of refine my on-air chops there, and now currently doing some local sports talk on a digital front, online radio and television. Everything's also podcasted as well. So that's kind of the current movement anyway, obviously. So anything you could get live, anything you could get archived you want. So I'm currently doing that, hosting a show called Student of the Game over at Go Live Vegas. So it's awesome. We just started about a month and a half ago. And I'm lucky enough when I actually get the opportunity to come here at Blue Wire to check it out. You guys are kind of just on the same page we are. Again, everything digital, everything available on social media platforms, on the internet, archived everywhere, video, audio. So kind of happy to be on the wave and very much kind of riding the same wave you are, riding everything with the fight game, the betting, everything, the analysis of the odds, but also just the overall love of the fight game, of combat sports, of MMA, and of, grappling, of kickboxing, of jiu-jitsu, of wrestling. I'm much like you in that regard. So, our roots are very much the same. Our origins are very much the same. So when I got the word that you want to be a part of the show today, I jumped at it immediately. So I'm excited, man. This is going to be great.
I mean, for those of you watching this on YouTube right now, you can tell this dude is very well trained when it comes to his podcast stuff, as he's cutting a promo, wrestling style, looking right into the camera.
And I'm like you and Kel, Andreas, Cole, everyone. Much of the nucleus of the family here at Blue Wire. I'm a Mark as well.
There's
going to be a lot of the terminology. My roots, my family's roots lie in Queens, just like yours do, and you're directly from there. So there's like a lot. There's a lot here. We're kind of a lot of parallels. So I'm interested to see where it goes here in the next couple of minutes.
It's like, what was that movie again? The Will Ferrell movie, dude, where with the step brothers.
Do we just become best friends?
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
absolutely.
That's it right there.
Dale
right
and
there.
Brennan. There you go. Yeah, we're exactly. Yeah, because again, we'll instead of karate in the garage, we'll be like rolling in the parking garage.
Yeah, or right outside the wind.
Yeah,
right
right.
Now. They got the rug over there, so it'll be good for us.
If you see Nick pulling guard on me or something, don't be confused. It's just we're on the same page here. We're good.
Dude, how pumped are you for this weekend's card, man? Every time there's a big UFC pay-per-view, I do like to do a little bit of a breakdown. I would love to do fight nights as well, but it's the pay-per-view where my show gets a lot of attention and a lot of people like to tune in because I like breaking down my content sometimes for the casuals, right?
Absolutely.
Because especially with pay-per-views, that's when you do get a lot more casuals to tune in.
Yep.
There's a banger of a card this weekend, so many good fights. And my question to you is, overall, very generic, but 1 to 10, how excited are you for this pay-per-view?
I'd say about a 7, just because not only do we have a big rematch.
I was at an 8.
It's like a trilogy, right?
Yeah,
and, again, you look at there's some depth to the card. I think it's interesting because there was one point, and this following the MMA beat for a long time, both just betting and just generally, that for a long time, they kind of stacked the cards. And it seems like recently, ever since, the page turned from 2022 to 2023, we're kind of getting more of a quality as opposed to a quantity in the cards. We're getting some like top heavy fights, those 2-3, the co-main event, the main event, usually really good. So it's kind of the point where maybe not every card is great like it once was, where it has 2-3 title fights or 2 title fights and a title eliminator. Maybe you only have 2 of those fights on the card, but the rest down is really intriguing and really relevant. You have potential up-and-comers, future contenders, guys who are just out of the picture but have an opportunity to get back in the picture like we have with Justin Gaethje. You kind of have that as opposed to the cards where they're just, they go for broke on one card, like a fight night, international fight week card, or a big holiday card or something like that, a midsummer card. And then there's a card that you just are like, this is barely good enough to crack television. So we don't necessarily get those kind of cards, but I noticed ever since, late 2022, early 2023, kind of ever since that Abu Dhabi card in October, we've been just getting very well-rounded cards where every card has something. A few weeks ago, we have a classic fight with Makhachev and Volkanovski. Last week, we have John Jones returning to the fold. And now we have a trilogy fight. We have an intriguing lightweight bout. There's just a lot to talk about, and it's almost like, boom, you're on to the next one, like if you blink.
Yeah, you bring up a lot of good points because I feel the same way too. And if you think about it, the 2022 pay-per-view slate, it's kind of mid, bro.
Right.
There were a lot of, especially where we know this one's in the O2 in London, which I'm very excited about because those London cards, man, the vibe of it, especially ever since COVID, even the fight nights where they had one in Long Island in the summer, they've had some in Austin, they've had some out of the Apex, they kind of have a pay-per-view aura to it because for so long, we were just in the Apex, right? Even last week's card with Jan and Marab, it felt like a high-level regional fight.
Right.
Because
it's in Vegas, but it's out of that facility.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it just looked different and it looks cool. So I'm going to try to have them out there. And with this one being in London, you know, going back to what I was just saying about the 2022 cards, like you look at all the pay-per-views that they put in Vegas last year, and I went to 2 of them. A lot of fuckery in a lot of those, right? You had let's go to March of last year. It was Covington and Mazola. Cool, some bad blood, but no title on the line. Then you go to fight week, and you had the eye poke with O'Malley. Everyone was kind of a dud after that. And then you had Adesanya, who was fighting Cannonier, and that was a headliner. That was kind of a dud fight. Adesanya just, you know, racked up points and cruised to a decision. Then you have the Chimaev, Nate Diaz fiasco with the weight loss.
Which was just a mess all around.
Just a mess. So that's 2 of the 3 cards up to date have no title as the main event.
Right.
And then I kind of like the way that played out because for us MMA fans, like the OGs, you don't want to see Tony and Nate being served up to get slaughtered, which was what was going to probably happen to those guys. And then you go to the December card. You have Yuri ends up pulling out, and then Glover doesn't get that title shot. And you have Ankalaev and Blachowicz going for it, and that was a draw.
With exactly.
And you're looking at it, you're like, dude, all these.
We had stretches, and let's not forget even the non-pay-per-view ones. We had stretches where you had multiple guys go down with injuries
in the main events.
You had
Ortega, back
to back on fight nights. Ortega gets hurt.
And Rakic
right after Alexander Rakic. So there was just a couple of weeks where there was some bad juju going on, and it's almost as if there was something in the water. And I'm completely with you. And you know, the one banger of the card we did get last year, the one with Yuri and Teixeira, obviously that card from top to bottom was incredible. Fight of the year, and you pinpoint that's easy card of the year. But like kind of like what you said, Nick, around that a little mid, when you have a conversation at year's end, because in MMA there's so much to talk about, you know, and to comprehend, and kind of when you put a bow on it. You usually on a good year can name multiple cards. Like 2015 had multiple cards. You had 189, 187, 194, all these notable pay-per-view cards. You know, other years in the past, 2016 even, you had 200, 202. You have like 205, these notable cards. Where here, outside of that one with that light heavyweight scrap and, you know, all those other bouts, the Valentina fight, all that, you can't really name off of, you know, firsthand, on at least on one hand, if you're counting them, how many numerical pay-per-view cards really stood out in your mind this past year, where in years past you could. Where this year, right off the bat, the past 3 of them, at least the past 2, and heading into this one, we may not be able to say that when it's all said and done. Again, they may not have top to bottom. You look at a great all-time card, but you can't say in the Sunday morning after that card was a dud. And I think that's going to be the case coming into this weekend as well.
Yeah, and also we got to show love to that MSG card in November too.
Oh, absolutely.
That one was that, and you're right, and the one with Yuri and Glover, which was that in Singapore?
That was Singapore. That was the one in June. That was the one in June.
Yeah, those are the 2 best cards. But you're right. So far, we've had some banger cards, and also the aura of John Jones coming back. I think that definitely helps it. But I want to get into this one because we have a trilogy fight in the main event. We got Leon Edwards versus Usman, which, you know, we're talking about mid and we're talking about duds. Dude, I was watching that August card because my buddy Jared, shouts to Jared Gordon.
Yep.
He was fighting. He fought Leonardo Santos. And I don't remember anything about that card until the head kick.
Yeah.
And then the last image we have of that card is the head kick. And then all of a sudden we're like, this is the best card ever. But it wasn't. And that fight also was minus 1,400 going into that 5th round, dude. And now the legacy of that fight is the come on, Leon, you know, his corner yelling at him. And then he has that moment with a minute left. And it's funny because I saw a video go viral of Bilal Muhammad talking about him wanting a rematch with Leon Edwards, right? Bilal Muhammad is another guy who's going to have a massive fight in a couple of months. His next fight is going to be basically a title
eliminator, absolutely,
against whoever it is. But it was funny because it circles back to this conversation about this main event. Leon was saying, if you watch that first round against Bilal and him, that eye poke, it didn't matter. I was just gonna cruise to a victory.
Right.
And then Bilal is saying, dude, how can you say that when you were getting dominated for 24 minutes and then you win with the head kick
of the decade, right?
Heck, that's gonna live forever. No matter what happens in this match, that's gonna be one of the clips. They'll upgrade that promo package that plays before every pay-per-view.
Yeah, the Bob O'Reilly one. Yeah,
that's gonna be in there.
Yeah, the Who.
But I'm kind of feeling Usman gets revenge in this one, dude. My early indication is that.
I'm completely with you. I think everything Kamaru Usman brought to the table, which again, like you said, is so easy to forget given what transpired in the final 45 seconds, 60 seconds of that bout. But I think it's going to be same song, different verse. And this time he finishes the deal. You know, what we talked about earlier, how, you know, as we get closer to the fight night, the round props start to get a little juicier, a little more intrigue there. I'm very interested to see what these situational-based props are going to be, because I think there's going to be a lot of value in that. I think Usman's going to keep in mind that I had this fight won. The reason why he had the opportunity to land that head kick was because I didn't go for a finish. And you grapple, you know the intricacies of it. If you watch Kamaru Usman go at it, I mean, on top of it, you know, wrestling with a guy like Justin Gaethje every day, you know, at that gym under Trevor Whitman, and with the amateur wrestling credentials he has, the guy also has an incredible jiu-jitsu skill set to complement that wrestling background. We just often don't see it because so much of often his wrestling is for control. We see him in the clinch. We see him, you know, pummeling with underhooks and stuff like that, like he did against Masvidal, or, you know, even keeping Gilbert Burns at bay. A lot of his wrestling is more defensive-oriented, and now he keeps kind of like, he sets himself up for positions to let his hands go. We've never really seen him, at least in recent memory, go for a finish on the mat in those scrambles. I think in this instance, we see that. Last fight against Rocky, he weathered the storm to his credit. A lot of that was just because he was just kind of, I guess you could say, I don't know what the best terminology is, but he was just kind of sandbagging it just long enough to survive, because Usman was kind of going for more position and control and to dominate rather than submission. I think he goes for a submission, whether he sinks in an arm triangle, whether he sinks in a lock, whether he takes the back, gets the hooks in. I think Usman's going to be a lot more active on the mat after he gets that initial takedown, to where Edwards won't be able to weather the storm. The pressure will be too much. And as opposed to, again, just that positioning, he'll go for the finish and take the judges completely out of it, and the chance of it going late to where a good striker like Edwards could potentially catch him again. Yeah, I'm with you.
Because Edwards is going to be live throughout the whole fight, because we just saw that be the case.
And that's the one thing in this matchup. You say styles make fights. Stylistically, that's the one thing he really brings to the table that Usman has to be, you know, wary of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and for me, I agree with you, because I've been looking at the finish props for this one, because I think Usman does put him away. It's interesting to note that despite Leon Edwards being the champ, he's the underdog. He's a 2-1 dog.
In his hometown.
In his hometown. The last time that they fought, I remember being on Bet to Win, the show hosted here at Blue Wire by Joe Fan.
Yeah.
And we were breaking down this fight. And I had told him, and I got very lucky. Like, I understand I was lucky. I said, I'm betting on Leon because I don't think he should be a plus 350 underdog in this fight.
Right.
And throughout the fight, though, Brett, I'm saying to myself, oh, what a shitty take. And then at the end, I'm celebrating like I'm the man. But the way that fight transpired is how I think this one's going to transpire as well, except that Usman's going to go for a finish.
Yeah.
Because I think Usman is probably the best welterweight of all time that we've seen. And I don't know how many more fights he has left in him. And I think he wants to leave on top. I wouldn't be surprised if, dude, you've heard the horror stories about his knees. Apparently, like, this dude can't walk on concrete.
He's very beat up.
It's very bad. So I think he gets revenge in this fight. He comes from a great camp, and they know that they can't play with fire. You can't be standing up. Izzy's going to probably be thinking the same thing with Pereira in a couple of weeks
1,000%. Same exact
so
scenario.
I think Usman is going to go back to what you said. Dude, you're this all-world wrestler. Can we see some more of that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't stand and bang with this guy, especially now that you know what can happen. I think Usman dominates. I think Usman gets a finish. You can find that at plus 260 in some places. And a trend that I find pretty powerful, I've made note of this many, many times in the past. Underdog champions in title fights since 2009, 14-8-1. Edwards is the underdog in this fight. And one of them is kind of an asterisk because when it was Izzy Whitaker 2, it was a coin flip. Like some places had Izzy. Oh, sorry, the first time that they fought each other.
It was essentially a pick 'em.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But some places they had Izzy as a favorite. Others had Whitaker.
There was variation.
That's
right.
why it might be 14-7-1, but it's something where, you had Poirier and Oliveira. Oliveira was a champ, and he was the underdog in that fight too. You saw it with Stipe and Francis won the first time that went down. So the one no contest was John Jones and DC many years back that got ruled a no contest. But to me, man, I think Usman gets it done. And then, 170 for a little bit, Brett, was kind of stagnant. It was Usman versus everybody, and he was lapping a lot of people.
He ran through the division essentially twice, and people don't forget, like the first fight against Edwards, obviously we were so comfortable looking at that first bout heading into the sequel, and all throughout the sequel, even though I know you could look at the odds like you said and think, maybe there's something here, maybe the bookies are onto something, but much like you said, lines can be off, numbers can be wrong in this game, especially more than anything else in the world of betting, because again, we're talking about human beings, we're talking about stylistic and situational elements here that change for each relative bout, and it was almost like everything that you kind of could handicap before that part two, you could check every box all the way up until that head kick, and it was there. So it's kind of hard to deviate from that. All respect to Edwards, tremendous finish, but it's like what you said, narratives kind of get, misconstrued in this sport, and because of that, it's very easy to think, oh, this was just an incredible underdog performance. He survived all the submission attempts or, the takedown attempts by Usman. And when he did get on the mat, he was able to get back up. Usman couldn't finish him on the canvas, and he created an opportunity for himself to end the fight. Technically, that happened, but look at what lens you're going, you're approaching that from.
Yeah, you can't look at the last moment.
Exactly.
That's nowhere near a microcosm of that entire fight. Because like we said, heading into round 5, they flashed the live odds the moment that them two went in and took the middle. And it was anywhere from minus 1,200. It was over minus 1,000 going in there. And I think the only way that you could bet Leon would be by knockout again. Because I don't think he could cruise to a decision over Usman because, like we were talking about, he wasn't cruising at all.
Yeah, it's not like this was a Colby Covington Usman banger to where you think, oh, he won some rounds. Like, no, it was complete and utter domination. And I think that's why in this fight, in the trilogy fight, we see that again, but in a more aggressive fashion, like a shark smelling blood in the water. It's not even so much a slight on Rocky because he's fluid, he's a great striker, and he's one tough son of a bitch. Again, from Kingston, Jamaica, has the British fighting culture embedded within him. All these things make up a champion, but not necessarily when you're fighting at the same time as what you said, the greatest welterweight, as I believe as well, to ever walk the face of the earth. We're talking about a fighter who at this point was kind of, I don't want to say it was in the rearview mirror, but he was thinking about possible moves up to 185, depending on what happened with Adesanya. Yeah. He was talking about fighting Canelo in boxing. It was clear that Usman was kind of preparing for the next step. And I think now, if anything, that's all out the window. All that matters is reclaiming his gold. And I think he gets the strap when it's all said and done. I think he gets a finish.
Yeah, I do too. I couldn't agree with you more. Sometimes it's a little wacky when you hear guys talking about other things. Like, never look past your opponent. It was, you mentioned Adesanya and moving up to 185. Remember Strickland during that press conference when Izzy last fought, when Strickland was fighting Pereira.
Yeah, and then Izzy was fighting
Strickland was talking about a matchup with Izzy, and Izzy was like, yo, man, this guy's dangerous. Just be careful. Yep. And then he ends up getting dropped.
Worry about him
first. So it's always, there's two things I hate when fighters do. When they're looking past someone, despite what the odds say, and two, when they're talking about potentially retiring or like, this is my last fight. Because you never know. You've seen it so many times where a guy just goes out and they end up retiring because they just don't have it anymore.
Yep.
And as someone that likes to bet, I'm always a little weary about that. So it's going to be fun. I think this is going to be a banger. I do think
how much in the door are they really?
Right. And I think both. I'd be surprised if this goes a decision. I think there's going to be a finish on Saturday in the O2 in the main event. And I do think Usman is going to justify him being a favorite. And then from there, we're going to see what happens at 170, dude, because he was thinking about 185 and cleaning out the division, but now you got my boy Rakhmonov.
Yeah.
I've coined him future champ for years now from his first fight, and he's lurking there. You got the Bilal
dangling
there. If him and Covington
and
could
Bilal's
go down.
been there a good minute now too.
Yeah,
like just kind of just sitting there waiting for his turn.
Yeah,
he's a bad matchup for a lot of guys in that division too. Maybe not necessarily Usman, but again, when you look at across the board, Bilal right there is as good as anybody. I would love to see that possibly in the works. Again, with lots, I think like you said, it's going to be very telling, not necessarily in just how it happens come Saturday night, but exactly when, like where in the fight, exactly what he does. For all we know, maybe he hurts Rocky on the mat and he finishes him with, ground and pound. We don't know. For all we know, Rocky has a completely different game plan. I mean, it's fight betting. You know it.
Yeah.
It gets topsy-turvy. It gets screwy like that. But if you're betting the stylistic elements, if you're betting the discipline, the traits of each discipline and each style, it's hard not to go with Kamaru here.
The co-main, also featuring someone else from the Whitman camp. Yeah, it's crazy. I feel like so many cards, them two fight together.
Yeah. And at one point,
Usman.
and a couple of years ago, what was in that Madison Square Garden camp where all three of them, and Namajunas fought with them. Yeah, so even in one of the clips they do, I don't know if it was like the embedded or one of the countdown type specials they do, Whitman even said he prefers that because he likes, not necessarily from the preparation aspects, he likes both fighters all week long being in that same mentality. And Usman watched Gaethje's victory over Chandler on that card,
right.
and before going on to take Covington a second time. A lot of times you kind of want to roll over on that emotion, but also you got to wonder if sometimes it's a detriment too. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me because there's been cards where Rose also fought on that.
Yeah.
So they would have three. And I think it was Chandler Gaethje where they ended up moving it to open. I was there for that. And they did it because Whitman was like, look, I like my fighters all fighting at this, on the same card.
But we get some breathing room
three
here.
in a row is, this high level. These are title eliminators. It's not opening up a prelim. But the way I would describe this co-main event this weekend is violence, violence, and more violence. And I think Fiziev is
live. And he's not even a dog, so he's not even say he's live. Yeah.
I think he's live for I don't know how many people want to face him at 155.
He's a boogeyman right now.
Yeah, for sure. I would say him and the other guy that I like a lot at 155 is Sarukian.
Yeah.
Them two guys there. We were talking about fight nights before and pay-per-views last year. Dude, I think my favorite fight of 2022 was Sarukian Gamrot. I've never felt more out of shape in my life watching a fight. Like those guys.
It's like a movie fight.
Dude, Fifth round with 2 minutes left. They're doing these insane scrambles like the fight just started. I was like, holy shit. And I was hungover too. I was day drinking because it was a day card.
What am I doing?
I was like, oh my God, what a piece of shit I am right now just watching this. Talk about being out of shape.
And especially when you're betting it too, there's almost like that extra, God, I'm a scumbag.
Yeah.
And now, man, at their own expense, I'm, capitalizing, financially from it too. That's the cherry on top of all of it. But no, I'm with you. He definitely is the guy right now who no one really wants to fight because not only, again, stylistically very dangerous, he can finish you.
Yeah.
And that's the like. You have a lot of Muay Thai guys, guys with the Thai boxing background who can incorporate all elements of the striking using all 8 limbs, but they don't really always let their hands go to kind of go for the kill, if you will.
They want to get you in the clinch.
Right, and they kind of want to be more methodical with it. And if they do finish you, they want to finish you more like kind of in an area that's more familiar with them. Fiziev lets his hands go.
Yeah.
He lets his hands go, and he doesn't care. He actually has very accurate punchers for a Muay Thai guy, almost more akin to a boxer, but he could also incorporate, again, those knees out of the clinch, the elbows, the body kicks, which he did in tremendous fashion in the last couple of bouts that he's had. So all these kind of things point to a very dangerous fighter in a division full of very well-rounded athletes. I mean, you could still make the case it's the most stacked division in the sport. It's maybe not like how it once was a few years ago, but you could definitely make the case when you look at all that top 10, there's a lot of wild card factors in it. You have a fighter like Gaethje, who's a great striker and an amazing wrestler, but never uses it. A fighter like Chandler, who's a great wrestler and a credible athlete, but likes to throw leather. A fighter like Poirier, who may have the best boxing in the entire sport, but also is tremendous fighting off his back. Someone like Oliveira, who's maybe the best submission guy in the history of the sport.
Or finisher.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
He does both. Yeah,
no doubt. So there's a lot of wild cards in the 155 weight class right now, to where even if you look at their last fight, it's still kind of a complete crapshoot coin toss because there's so many guys who could just completely put you out. And Fiziev is like the newest one, and he's going against a guy who may have the best chin we've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm starting to worry about with Gaethje, dude, because
how many battles is too many?
You have a great chin until you don't. And then when you don't, it ends bad
when the chin goes, you go.
Yeah, you know who's a guy who I'm worried about his chin might be shot?
Miocic?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
McGregor even too.
I would say Max, dude.
Oh, absolutely.
Max been in some wars.
I think that was evidence going, even though he never really was truly hurt in the third fight against Volkanovski. It was more so just a complete and utter domination by what at this point is a superior fighter. You could kind of tell Max was just not standing in the line of fire. He was kind of more in. He's always been a good in and out guy, but there's been times Max just hits in the pocket and says, "Let's go."
Yeah.
That wasn't there in the last couple of fights. And plus, you had the battle against Yair Rodriguez. Like, there's just been some wars there, and I think I'm with you. McGregor's had some wars. Miocic has had some wars.
Dude, Poirier also.
And the fact that Poirier's chin is still there is amazing to me. We saw Cerrone's chin go. We saw Robbie Lawler's chin go. I mean, eventually it catches up with you.
I have a thing with one of my buddies, Dylan. Shouts to Dylan, man. Him and I, we always talk UFC, and he's been on the show a bunch of times too. And we always say that if you're telling me a fighter's strengths, and the first thing you tell me is he's tough, that's a red flag for me. It's the same thing when like people would argue NBA resumes, and they mention someone has a gold medal and they're American.
Right.
It's like, no disrespect to the Olympics, but
if you're not, how many gold medals are you going to get?
How many gold medals? Like, it's not that impressive if you're an American basketball player on the men's team and you have a gold medal. Like, to me, it's not. If you're on Greece,
right,
and you have a gold medal, like, that's dope. But it would always be the case for Carmelo Anthony. When people used to argue for Melo, they would say, "Oh, yo, but he got 3 gold medals." It's like, come on, dude.
You kind of should.
They're favored by 30 points every single game. They're minus 800 to win every gold medal. Right. It's not that impressive to me. Sorry. I know I might be on my own here, but
there's a reason why that 04 team was considered such an anomaly, and the 08 team to bounce back and win gold was considered like a huge storyline because something happened that never happens. Right. Notice how ever since then it's not really much of a talking point. It's not at all. Because they went back to dominating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about UFC fighters, when I ask you like, yo, what do you think of this guy? If you tell me immediately, yo, he's tough, I'm like, oh boy.
I like that. Because you know what it is? It's that.
And that's what we have with Gaethje too. Yeah. Like, that's one of the main things that they say. Like, you know, Gaethje's a tough fighter. And he is. Like, no disrespect to him or not to discredit him. But I worry about a guy like Gaethje, guys like Poirier, where they've been in these wars, dude, which we love as fans, right? Like, we want to see those kind of fights. But man, Dan Hooker has never been the same since that Poirier fight, at all. Right? It's like win, loss, win. You know what I mean?
Joanna Jędrzejczyk, there's another one. I mean, you got to wonder, Rose has now been in some scraps. How much longer does she have? Like, it always seems to catch up with you. And I also love the point that you make in that it's a red flag because it's not so much will scare you off in the fact that you think he's a liability to get finished. It's more so, okay, what are you going to do to finish your opponent? Because you could have the best chin in the world. That's not hurting the guy who's actually hitting you. Even if he punches himself out and, gasses himself out, you still have to do something on top of that. And that for a long time was the question on Gaethje. Is he a good fighter with a tremendous amount of heart, toughness, grit, and moxie? Or is he, and is that it? Or is he an elite fighter where that's kind of just a bonus attribute? It's kind of been ebbs and flows based off of his opponent and based off the style. And, you have someone, again, with tremendous wrestling credentials, as good as anybody really in that division in terms of the amateur aspect, and someone, again, who trains with another elite amateur wrestler in Kamaru Usman, and he never really uses it, much like Michael Chandler, and never really uses it. Yoel Romero, even Henry Cejudo. It's like some of these guys, once they get comfortable throwing leather and learning how to let their hands go, and they have that explosive, quick twitch athleticism as it is, that's what they want to go to. And yeah, it's been entertaining and it's been fun, but it also makes it very hard to predict going in. And also on top of it, Gaethje against Chandler, it's tough because on that, I'd say going in, I'd probably edge out Chandler. There's a lot of elements to Chandler's game that kind of Gaethje brings to the table as well, but I like Chandler's ability to possibly finish the fight more. It was hard to pick against Chandler in that fight. What happens? We see Gaethje come through.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like every time you start to kind of doubt him, you see him in these wars against Poirier. Same with Tony Ferguson. You think Tony Ferguson at that point, maybe he still has enough left in the tank to be an issue.
Going back to talking about toughness.
Right.
Tony, after that Gaethje fight, never the same.
Never the same. It's almost like he took his soul.
Yeah.
And going into that fight is, hindsight, 2020, but at the same time, you think like, wow, this could be a bad matchup for Justin. So Justin is that kind of fighter to where you can never count him out because the chin is so good and the game and the heart is always going to be there. The dude's an absolute dog. But will he be able to do enough to put his opponent away? And with a guy with a Muay Thai background like this, I don't know.
And the last time we saw Fiziev was really impressive because that was a 5-round main event against RDA, who, I was never an RDA guy. His resume, man. I was looking at it the other day.
Legends.
Because he put out some cryptic tweet about, like guys don't call me out and I never say no to fights.
Yeah.
And you look at the resume, like he's only fought top 5 guys.
In 2 divisions, too.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
what's so great.
155 and 170.
Yep.
Yeah. This fight is going to be violence. It's minus 500 that the judges don't need to be given a decision, right? So inside the distance there, fight doesn't go, I should say.
And you're looking at some of these. I mean, you have Justin Gaethje coming back at what, plus 190 as a dog. That's hard not to look at.
He is the definition of a live dog.
Absolutely.
Like he's gonna fight for your money.
And
that's something
look at
I like
how those
to say.
odds change.
That's something I like to say with sports betting in MMA. How there are some underdogs that'll fight for your money, and what I mean by that is like Marab over the weekend against Jan. He's gonna fight for your money. He's not gonna go out like a sucker. You know what you're gonna get out of him. He's gonna keep the pace. He's a tough out. Same thing with Gaethje. Gaethje has a 2-1 dog. I'm definitely gonna be betting on Gaethje this weekend, even though I think Fiziev might be able to get a finish. I think a 2-1 line is a little off there.
Yeah.
And it brings me into another fight on the main event as we start to wrap up on the main card, because I do have someone else coming on. And I'm definitely going to have you on again, bro.
No, absolutely. And likewise, but when I wrap things up, I'll let them know where to find me. We'll get you on as well.
Yeah,
maybe sometime next week to wrap things up.
For sure.
Yeah.
There is a fight this weekend that I think it might be the biggest bet I'll ever make in MMA. And I went over to the MGM on Saturday night because I cleaned up last week. I loved Lipsky.
Yeah.
Shout out to the members of the Patreon. You're getting the picks you're eating as well. It's not just me cashing these out. It's one of the perks for being a member of the Patreon. But I had Volkov. Couldn't believe that line, plus 140. I was like, that's wild. And after the first takedown defense that he had against Romanov, you just saw like he was seeing ghosts. You're going to believe it.
It's rock, paper, scissors. That's what it is. Like, again, numbers do lie. News, a lot of times they don't, but if there's a sport they do, it's this. Where even the bookies, you talk to people in the combat sports, handicapping world, they'll even admit, we were way off on that one. Guys who booked UFC at properties in this town, at this very sports, this very casino, they'll even admit they were wrong there. That's why they were so desperate for a dog all the way up until the Grasso victory.
Yeah. I got a good story for you. There was a professional bettor out here, which I'm not going to name any names, but I met him a couple of weeks ago. It was the week of the Jones fight.
Yeah.
And I get introduced to him, and he's an iconic name in the sports betting industry. And the guy that introduced me was like, "Yo, this is the kid I've been telling you about that bets UFC out here. He makes a killing."
Yep.
And he goes, "Oh, okay." He's like, what do you like this week?" I was like, "John Jones." And then he goes, "Oh." He says John Jones. Everyone's on John Jones. And I'm like, oh, hold on. I was like, it's the only sport where public perception, it don't matter to me.
Absolutely.
It's the only one where if you tell me that the whole world is on a certain fighter, if I like that fighter, it doesn't matter. Now, if everybody is taking the Colts -3, I'm going to be like, all right, there's 90% of the action, Brett. We might have to go the other way, but not in fighting. And I go to him, I'm like,
yes,
that fight's not going to make it out of round 1. It's going to take one takedown, and then it's a wrap. He's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, 6-1 odds, bro, by submission. And then he gets the first round submission win. I'm just saying, bro, just because you don't know about it don't mean it ain't true.
It's spot on because, and it's kind of like what we talked about right before we came on air. When you're betting something like professional football, the teams are important. The quarterbacks are important. Defenses, coaches, skill positions, offensive, defensive line is important. But it all plays backseat to the line. You're ultimately betting the line before you bet anything else.
You bet numbers, not teams.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you. You bet numbers, not teams, especially in professional football. You do not bet odds in UFC or boxing. You bet fighters. Even if, like what we talk about right here, you get a bit of great value, an opportunity for great profit, you have to take it step by step, frame by frame, because, again, it's all going to be based off of that situational element that kind of is restarted and the refresh button is hit every time that fighter steps in that octagon again for another bout. You have to just turn the page and clean the slate.
There's a fight this weekend in the women's division. She's -190, and this is a clear the bankroll. Casey O'Neill, undefeated fighter, fights out of Extreme Couture.
Yep.
Shouts to Eric Nixick. I've had him on the show. Great dude. Always showing love. I can't believe that she's not -600.
It's a gift.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
Plus 350 by finish. She is someone who Hunt's finishes. Jennifer Maia, past her prime. I think they're trying to give Casey I don't want to say a layup fight, but a showcase fight against, because you know they're going to milk this is a former title challenger.
Exactly. And Maia has a grappling background. She's one of those fighters who at this point in her career can still make it tough. So if you have someone who's scrappy, who kind of muddies it up, makes it difficult, and you come out kind of looking clean on the other side, especially a prospect like her, who's made her bones in Tiger MMA, now Extreme Couture, like 2 elite schools now. This is exactly what you said. Maybe not a tune-up fight, but a showcase fight. I think the odds are absolutely tremendous here.
Yeah. Yeah, I text Jeremiah immediately. I told all my buddies back home, I was like, yo, I bet this already. I bet this last Wednesday.
Yeah.
Because, anytime there's a UFC pay-per-view, you'll be able to get a lot of the lines like a couple of months in advance sometimes, when mostly like the main event or like the actual confirmed fights. But, dude, I saw that and I was like, man, this is the earliest I've ever made a UFC bet by a landslide. And I'm overly confident. I think she's going to be a girl that's going to be competing for a title.
Yeah.
And I know she's coming off an injury, but all signs and things that I've heard is that she looks amazing. And again, they're just giving her, Jennifer Maia, to be a sort of, all right, this is a former title challenger.
It's a good run. It's a good rub. Like we used to talk about pro wrestling.
She's going to get over on that.
She's not necessarily a gatekeeper, but she's not a stepping stone either, kind of somewhere in the middle to where a win off her looks good, but at the same time, you're not kind of throwing her to the dogs too early like they have to some in the past. I mean, I remember when they did that to Sage Northcutt, to Brian Barberina, who's on this card. Paige Van Zandt kind of fizzled out too early. Aaron Pico, not at the best start to his career before he kind of was able to right the ship. I talked about on this very set with Kel, the 2 biggest things I hold true in this sport are exactly what you said, Nick. Styles do make fights, and you are ultimately betting human beings. You're not betting numbers. That's number 1, especially on the betting side of things. And then just number 2, more generally, like, people peak late in this sport, dude. People become champions late in the sport. People often enter it late because they're often doing other things on the amateur circuit, so they're not able to get into it right away, like you are maybe with boxing and something else where you start when you're 7, 8 years old. People get in the sport late, and it takes a while for it to all come together. And sometimes when that clicks, that's when you see it, and it may not happen until they're in their late 20s, early 30s.
That's why what John Jones has done is wild, being the youngest champion at 23.
To only get better and better, too.
To only get better and better, and the resume.
That's what it is, dude.
Like
I said on my show.
It's Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer.
Vitor, Shogun, Chael Sonnen, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Gustafsson
DC.
twice. DC, honestly, one's a no contest, as you alluded to, but that head kick was so freaking incredible. I mean, I might as well count it as 2 times, especially given the fact I think DC is one of the 3 best ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you have all these guys, and then you have guys like Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes and who was it? Anthony Smith, like in the middle, like, and he's able to do it all there as well. It just, he's never once faltered and has only gotten better. He's the best to ever do it. It's really tremendous.
Brett, this was a banger.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I love that you came on. I love that we connected, and I guarantee you this won't be the last time. We'll definitely talk about getting you on again.
I was gonna say, I think we fulfilled the promo we kind of set things up with to start it off here, right? So good.
Maybe for the pay-per-views, dude. I'll try to get you in because I like having people in studio, and now I think the chemistry has been dope. Tell the people where they can find you on social.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Brett Lawson LV. I host a show called Student of the Game on the Go Live Vegas network. Just a local studio out here on the digital front, much like you see at Blue Wire. All our shows all live feeds are available, audio and video on all social media platforms, as well as Roku and our audio app, which has our audio feed. So you can find us on your smart speaker, your smart TV, all your mobile devices, your tablets, your computers, everything in between. And all episodes are also archived. My show takes place on Wednesdays at 1 Pacific. So we'd love to get you on that in the near future, maybe recapping some of the festivities we'll see go down here this weekend. Should be a fun one. And I'm always happy to jump on with you and talk shop because this is awesome what you guys have going on here. And again, much like me, you are cut from the very same cloth. So I'm happy we got to do this, man. This was a privilege.
Shout out to Queens, right?
Oh, Queens get the money, baby. Gotta love it.
At Nick Diaz 10 as you can find me. VeteransMinimum.com as you can find all things VM. And we'll be back later this week with more. Peace.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate you, man. Man, that was awesome. Yeah, you know it's good when 30 minutes or 40 minutes is like 15.
I know, man. I would have kept going.